As Donald Trump pushes ahead with a risky naval blockade, is Iran now drawing a hard red line in the Strait of Hormuz that could dramatically backfire on Washington? As the US rolls out its new Hormuz strategy, is Iran's Revolutionary Guard right to brand it illegal and tantamount to piracy on the high seas? While Trump doubles down on his blockade gamble, are America's own Gulf allies the ones who could end up paying the steepest and most dangerous price? When Tehran warns that touching its ports could plunge the entire Gulf into darkness, how far is Iran really prepared to go to make good on that chilling threat? After fragile talks collapse and tensions surge across the region, Iran is warning that any US blockade could ignite uncontrollable chaos right across the Gulf. On April 13th, Iran's military command bluntly cautioned that a US naval blockade would not stay limited, but instead trigger a wider and more dangerous escalation throughout the Gulf. Tehran declared that if its own ports come under threat, then no port anywhere in the Persian Gulf or the Sea of Oman will remain safe from retaliation or disruption. IRGC spokesperson Ibrahim Zulfikari blasted the planned US restrictions as flatly illegal, denouncing them as nothing less than a brazen act of piracy under the guise of security.
The spokesman of the Central Command headquarters of Qatham al-Anbiya has issued the following statement in response to new threats from the aggressor America against our country and the maritime security of vessels in international waters. In the name of God, the compassionate and the merciful. The armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran consider defense the legal rights of our country a natural and legal duty, and on this basis, reiterate and exercise the sovereignty of the Islamic Republic of Iran in the territorial waters of our country as a natural right that belongs to the Iranian nation. Accordingly, the armed forces will resolutely continue to ensure security in the territorial waters of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And as has been repeatedly announced, vessels affiliated with the enemy do not have and will not be allowed the right of passage through the Strait of Hormuz, while other vessels will continue to be allowed to pass through the strait in compliance with the regulations of the armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Also, given the continuation of the enemy's threats against the Iranian nation and the national security of our country even after the war, the Islamic Republic of Iran will resolutely implement a permanent mechanism for controlling the Strait of Hormuz. The announcement by the criminal American regime to impose a blockade on the movement of maritime vessels in international waters is an illegal act and an example of piracy at sea. The armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran explicitly and resolutely declare that the security of ports in the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman is either for everyone or for no one. If the security of the ports of the Islamic Republic of Iran in the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman is threatened, no other port in the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman will be safe.
Earlier, Iran's elite Revolutionary Guard had cautioned the US and its allies that any miscalculation in the Gulf could spiral quickly, with consequences far beyond what Washington intends. The IRGC Navy warned that a single wrong move by US forces could drag them into what it called a deadly whirlpool of destruction, hinting at a conflict from which there may be no easy exit. Iranian outlets stress that the IRGC effectively controls the Strait of Hormuz and will allow only civilian ships to pass, and even then only if they comply with strict conditions set by Tehran. US President Donald Trump said on April 12 that the US Navy would move to lock down the Strait of Hormuz after negotiations with Iran failed to produce a lasting agreement. Trump also declared that US forces would intercept, on global seas, any ship that continued to pay transit tolls or fees to Iran, signaling a bid to choke off Tehran's maritime revenue. Later, the US military announced that a naval blockade on Iran would formally begin from 10 a.m. Eastern Time on April 13, setting a precise start time for the operation. American commanders stated that they would seek to blockade all maritime traffic entering and exiting Iranian ports, dramatically tightening pressure on Tehran's trade routes. As the blockade officially got underway, Donald Trump took to Truth Social on April 13 to directly threaten Iranian vessels, turning social media into yet another front in the standoff. Trump boasted that Iran's navy was laying at the bottom of the sea, claiming that 158 of its ships had already been obliterated in what he framed as a show of overwhelming US power. He further warned that any fast attack craft approaching the blockade line would be immediately eliminated, signaling a zero-tolerance posture toward Iranian naval maneuvers. Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghai hit back, condemning the blockade as an act of revenge on the global economy that punishes everyone, not just Tehran. Baghai questioned whether an illegal war of choice can really be won through a revenge of choice, challenging the logic behind using economic and military pressure as payback. He went further, mocking Trump by asking whether this strategy is basically cutting off one's nose to spite one's face, implying the US may damage its own interests along with everyone else's. All this unfolded as US officials confirmed that the naval blockade was already active, halting and inspecting traffic entering and leaving Iranian ports and raising fears of a wider showdown. After failed peace talks, Iran has warned the United States that Americans may soon miss today's relatively cheap gasoline. Iran's parliament speaker, Mohammad Bakr Kalibaf, made the warning on April 12, according to Press TV. Kalibaf suggested that US consumers could soon grow nostalgic for current fuel prices as tensions keep rising. His comments came shortly after President Donald Trump ordered the US Navy to impose a naval blockade on Iran. The move is aimed at the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical sea lanes for international oil shipments. Tensions between Washington and Tehran have continued to escalate following the collapse of peace talks in Islamabad. According to the American Automobile Association, average gasoline prices in the United States are about $4.125 per gallon. Reports say US gasoline prices have already climbed roughly 40% compared to pre-war levels. Oil prices surged again on April 12, after Washington announced a blockade of Iranian ports starting the next day. US crude jumped around 8% to $104.24 per barrel, while Brent crude rose about 7% to $102.29. Iran, for its part, has already restricted passage through the Strait of Hormuz, allowing only a limited number of countries' vessels to pass. Iran's Revolutionary Guards Navy has stated that the strait will not return to pre-war conditions for what it calls adversary states. Meanwhile, the US president has said he does not care if Iran chooses not to return to the negotiating table.
I would say it's holding well. Their military is destroyed. Their whole Navy is underwater. You know that 158 ships are gone. Their Navy's gone. Most of their mine droppers are gone. We have a lot of people, as you know, at 10 o'clock tomorrow, we have a blockade going into effect. That'll be 10 o'clock tomorrow. Other nations are working so that Iran will not be able to sell oil. And that will be very effective. But what we want to do is we want to, and again, we don't need it. What we notice and what we see and what I think is maybe my idea, maybe not, I don't know. But there are many boats heading toward our country to fill up with oil and then go and take it. So they're not going to go through the Hormuz Strait. And ultimately that'll be corrected. But in the meantime, they're using us. We have more oil because of drill, baby, drill. We have more oil than Russia and Saudi Arabia put together. I think Iran is in very bad shape. I think they're very desperate. We had a meeting that lasted 21 hours. We understand the situation better than anybody, and Iran's in very bad shape. And just so you understand, Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. Will not have. There is no way that they're going to get. They still want it, and they made that clear the other night. Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. Oh, I don't know. I don't care if they come back or not. If they don't come back, I'm fine. Their military is gone. Their missiles are largely depleted. The manufacturing capability for missiles and drones is largely defeated. We've been very nice. We haven't ripped down too many bridges. We did one only because they broke their word, they broke their promise. And remember, their promise was that they were going to open the Hormuz Strait. They didn't do it. They lied. We don't like a pope that's going to say that it's okay to have a nuclear weapon. We don't want a pope that says crime is okay in our cities. I don't like it. I'm not a big fan of Pope Leo. He's a very liberal person, and he's a man that doesn't believe in stopping crime. He's a man that doesn't think that we should be toying with a country that wants a nuclear weapon so they can blow up the world. I'm not a fan of Pope Leo.
The United States has announced it will begin a blockade of all maritime traffic to and from Iranian ports starting April 13th. This action follows an order from President Donald Trump to ratchet up pressure on Tehran after negotiations between the two sides failed. The blockade will apply to vessels of all nations that are entering or leaving Iranian ports and coastal areas along Iran's shoreline. According to reports, the restrictions will cover shipping routes across the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. However, U.S. officials say transit through the Strait of Hormuz to non-Iranian ports will not be affected and will be allowed to continue. Mariners operating in these waters have been advised to closely monitor official broadcasts and maintain communication with U.S. naval forces while transiting the region.